This is a deeper clarity and explanation for Revelation chapter 13, with what I see in the symbolism and in the realism. Revelation chapter 13 verse 1. I see John standing on the sand of the sea, and I see a beast rising out of the sea, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and upon his horns 10 crowns, and upon his heads the name of blasphemy. I understand the sea to mean the restless nations and peoples of the world, as in Isaiah chapter 57 verse 20, and I understand this beast to be a final world kingdom, and also the man who rules it, rising from among the Gentile nations. The 7 heads are 7 mountains and 7 kings, as explained in Revelation chapter 17 verse 9 and verse 10, and the 10 horns are 10 kings who give power to the beast, and the blasphemy shows its direct opposition to God. Revelation chapter 13 verse 2. And the beast which I saw was like unto a leopard, and his feet were as the feet of a bear, and his mouth as the mouth of a lion. I see this as the summing up of all the former Gentile empires that Daniel saw in Daniel chapter 7 verse 4 through verse 6, the swiftness of Greece like a leopard, the crushing strength of Medo-Persia like a bear, the devouring power of Babylon like a lion. I understand that the dragon, who is Satan, as in Revelation chapter 12 verse 9, gave him his power and his seat and great authority, for Satan offered this same authority to Jesus in Luke chapter 4 verse 6. Revelation chapter 13 verse 3. And I saw one of his heads as it were wounded to death, and his deadly wound was healed, and all the world wondered after the beast. I understand this to be a counterfeit resurrection, a mimicking of Christ who was slain and rose again, as in Revelation chapter 5 verse 6. In symbolism it may be a kingdom that fell and revived. In realism I see a man, the Antichrist, who suffers a fatal wound and is healed by satanic power, causing the world to marvel and follow him in worship. Revelation chapter 13 verse 4. And they worshiped the dragon which gave power unto the beast, and they worshiped the beast, saying, Who is like unto the beast, who is able to make war with him? I see the true object of worship revealed here. It is not just the man but Satan behind him. I hear the language that belongs only to God, as in Exodus chapter 15 verse 11, Who is like unto thee, O Lord, now twisted and given to the beast. In realism, I see humanity finally getting the godless ruler it has always wanted. Revelation chapter 13 verse 5. And there was given unto him a mouth speaking great things and blasphemies, and power was given unto him to continue 42 months. I recognize this mouth as the same as the little horn in Daniel chapter 7 verse 8, full of pride and boasting against God. I understand the 42 months to be 3½ years, the last half of Daniel's 70th week, as in Daniel chapter 9 verse 27, a limited time given by God's sovereign permission. Revelation chapter 13 verse 6. And he opened his mouth in blasphemy against God, to blaspheme his name, and his tabernacle, and them that dwell in heaven. I see his blasphemy has 3 targets. I see him cursing the very name of God the Father, mocking his dwelling place, and reviling those who are already with God in heaven, both angels and the redeemed, as in Revelation chapter 12 verse 12. This is the man of sin described in 2 Thessalonians chapter 2 verse 4. Revelation chapter 13 verse 7. And it was given unto him to make war with the saints, and to overcome them, and power was given him over all kindreds, and tongues, and nations. I understand that during this time God permits the beast to persecute those who come to faith after the rapture, the tribulation saints, as in Daniel chapter 7 verse 21. I see in symbolism a universal dominion, and in realism a true global government where no tribe or language is exempt from his rule. Revelation chapter 13 verse 8. And all that dwell upon the earth shall worship him, whose names are not written in the book of life of the Lamb slain from the foundation of the world. I understand this worship is universal except for the elect. I see the Lamb as Jesus Christ, as in John chapter 1 verse 29, slain before the foundation, as in 1 Peter chapter 1 verse 19 and verse 20. I take comfort that my security is not in my own strength but in the fact that my name was written by grace before time began, as in Ephesians chapter 1 verse 4. Revelation chapter 13 verse 9. If any man have an ear, let him hear. I hear Jesus speaking the same phrase he used to the churches in Revelation chapter 2 and chapter 3, and in Matthew chapter 11 verse 15. I understand this as a solemn call for spiritual discernment, for what follows requires faith to endure. Revelation chapter 13 verse 10. He that leadeth into captivity shall go into captivity, he that killeth with the sword must be killed with the sword. Here is the patience and the faith of the saints. I understand this as God's law of divine retribution, as in Genesis chapter 9 verse 6, and as Jesus taught in Matthew chapter 26 verse 52. I see that I am not to retaliate against the beast with fleshly weapons, but to trust in God's justice and to endure, as in Romans chapter 12 verse 19. Revelation chapter 13 verse 11. And I beheld another beast coming up out of the earth, and he had 2 horns like a lamb, and he spake as a dragon. I see now the second beast, distinct from the first who came from the sea of Gentiles. This one comes from the earth, which I take to mean a more settled, perhaps religious, or even Israelitish origin. He looks like a lamb, like Christ, as in John chapter 1 verse 29, but speaks the language of the dragon, which shows deception, a counterfeit Holy Spirit, gentle in appearance but satanic in message. Revelation chapter 13 verse 12. And he exerciseth all the power of the first beast before him, and causeth the earth and them which dwell therein to worship the first beast, whose deadly wound was healed. I understand this second beast to be the false prophet, as he is named in Revelation chapter 19 verse 20. Just as the Holy Spirit causes men to worship Christ, as in John chapter 16 verse 14, this false prophet causes men to worship Antichrist, and I see his ministry is entirely to promote the first beast. Revelation chapter 13 verse 13. And he doth great wonders, so that he maketh fire come down from heaven on the earth in the sight of men. I recognize this as a counterfeit of the true prophets, as Elijah did in 1 Kings chapter 18 verse 38, and of the 2 witnesses in Revelation chapter 11 verse 5. I see that in the last days deception will be supernatural, as Jesus warned in Matthew chapter 24 verse 24, that miracles alone do not prove truth. Revelation chapter 13 verse 14. And deceiveth them that dwell on the earth by the means of those miracles which he had power to do in the sight of the beast, saying to them that dwell on the earth, that they should make an image to the beast, which had the wound by a sword, and did live. I see mass deception through signs, leading to idolatry. I remember the command against images in Exodus chapter 20 verse 4, and I see this as the final abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel in Daniel chapter 12 verse 11 and by Jesus in Matthew chapter 24 verse 15, an image set up to be worshipped. Revelation chapter 13 verse 15. And he had power to give life unto the image of the beast, that the image of the beast should both speak, and cause that as many as would not worship the image of the beast should be killed. I see breath, or pneuma in the Greek, given to the lifeless image, a counterfeit of God breathing life into Adam in Genesis chapter 2 verse 7. In symbolism it is idol worship made alive. In realism I believe it to be a literal image, perhaps through technology or demonic power. that actually speaks and demands worship under penalty of death, forcing the choice foretold in Joshua chapter 24 verse 15. Revelation chapter 13 verse 16. And he causeth all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, to receive a mark in their right hand, or in their foreheads. I see a universal economic and religious control system. Just as God seals his people in their foreheads in Revelation chapter 7 verse 3, and commands his law to be upon our hand and forehead in Deuteronomy chapter 6 verse 8, Satan now counterfeits that sealing with his own mark, demanding total allegiance in thought and in action. Revelation chapter 13 verse 17. And that no man might buy or sell, save he that had the mark, or the name of the beast, or the number of his name. I see the realism of this more clearly than any generation before me. I see a world where commerce is controlled, where without submission to the beast system a person cannot participate in the economy. I understand this is not merely economic but worship, for to take the mark is to pledge loyalty to the beast, as warned in Revelation chapter 14 verse 9 through verse 11. Revelation chapter 13 verse 18. Here is wisdom. Let him that hath understanding count the number of the beast, for it is the number of a man, and his number is 666. I understand 6 to be the number of man, created on the 6th day in Genesis chapter 1 verse 27, falling short of God's perfect 7, as in Romans chapter 3 verse 23. I see 3 sixes as man exalting himself as a false trinity, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit counterfeited by dragon, beast, and false prophet. I do not chase endless speculation on the name, for the text says wisdom is needed, not mere calculation, and I rest knowing that those who have the Spirit of God will recognize him when he is revealed, as in 2 Thessalonians chapter 2 verse 3.